Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is 30milesofcorruption.com, and today we are going to talk about how we started 30milesofcorruption.com. Of course, I think it's a really interesting story how we started, and we get asked all the time. So we are going to share our entire journey and our story with you. It is going to take a little bit of time, so we're going to cut it up, but we're going to share it with you on how we started. In about 1990, we actually rented this space from the Freeman Company, who actually are probably the best landlords downtown Riverside. It was Shirley Freeman, and we love her. She was wonderful to us, and she leased us our first building. Our first big business actually was Biocorium Day Spa. And my husband is a pharmacist, and I am a skincare girl. Okay, I'm a skincare girl, and I deal with the skin all the time. So we started a big day spa downtown, and I remember getting a call from Kelly Roberts, thinking that she was only the skincare queen in the city of Riverside. And actually, she did not want us to put a spa across the street from the Mission Inn because she had plans. And I'm like, what the hell? This is nuts. I mean, I thought you could have a business anywhere. So that was my first, little interesting encounter, was with her. And so we didn't pay any attention to her. We just opened our spa anyway. And so the 10 years that we were there, we got a lot of city employees were our clients, a lot of county employees were our clients. And it was really interesting because I knew nothing about city politics. Absolutely nothing. And then all of a sudden, after about 5 years being there, I mean, going back then, I remember we rented Main Street for this huge party on Main Street. And we rented Main Street for $28. Can you believe that? After we rented it for $28, the price just kept on going up and up and up and up. It was insane. By the time we left, it was just impossible to secure Main Street. There were so many restrictions, but at least we had a great party. But going back to over time, about 5 years after we were there was parking meters. All these parking meters started popping up all over, and our clients were just like, what is this? Now I've got to come here and pay for parking. I mean, downtown was wonderful because everybody would come for lunch. You had all the regulars. You had all the really Riverside elite always coming down there. It was a blast. And then slowly, more regulation. Slowly, things started to change, and we were looking at everything that was happening, and then we got this letter that they were literally going to dig up Main Street, and that really they were going to shut down all these businesses because they were going to make a new sidewalk for Main Street. What was really interesting, everybody just kind of went with the flow with whatever the city wanted to do, but slowly but surely we were kind of learning what City Hall was doing. We didn't know anything about the Renaissance, nothing at all. We were all clueless to what was going on right there on this Main Street. So come to find out, there was this bar where there's a bar there right now on 6th and Main. There was a bar there, and it was owned by this couple. And they actually sued the city, and they won. Yeah, they sued the city for shutting down that sidewalk. It was really interesting. We didn't sue the city at that time because it was just like, forget it. We weren't going to get into that. We just wanted to be a good neighbor. But anyway, it just kind of evolved. And then what happened is the city purchased our building. And it was like in 2008 when the whole economy was going crazy and people were really struggling down there. And it was a nightmare. And again, I knew nothing about the city, but there they go. They purchased our building for $4 million. And they were going to be our new landlord. And I was, oh, hell no. That meant new contracts. No, it wasn't happening for me. And I knew all along they wanted my location because I did believe that that was the best location in the entire city. And you know, before we got it, it had just sat empty and it was a dump. And we made it like this beautiful place, right? But that's okay. City came in. So Brad Hudson walks in, and I didn't know who Brad Hudson was. And he told me that he was going to raise the rents or whatever. And I told him that his Main Street wasn't worth 10 cents a foot, what they've done to it with all the regulations and all that. I said, it's all relative. I mean, if you were downtown LA on Sunset Boulevard and you had this enormous amount of traffic and you were paying $40,000 for rent, it wouldn't matter because it was all relative, because you'd have the ability to capture that income. But in Riverside, they had literally shut down Main Street. It was unbelievable. Well, we decided to go. And it was very difficult to pay our rent at the time. Our rent was like almost $6,000, and it really was difficult to pay our rent. And we just decided we had given up. We had given up on it. So one day I walked in the building and I told my husband, we're packing up. And so it took us a month to get out of there, to pack up this 8,000 square foot building. Less than 30 days. And in that 30 days, of course, I got a cease and desist letter. I think that's what they're called, from the city of Riverside, from Greg Priamos. And that was my first introduction to Greg Priamos. And at this time, I was defeated, depressed, unsure as to where we were going to go. The economy was down. And we finally got home. And two incredible things happened. One, I had this friend, her name is Irma Flores. And Irma Flores said, let's get a group of people together and discuss what is going on in City Hall. She was very savvy in local city politics. And again, I knew nothing. And I thought, oh my God, I don't want to do this. But I did it because she was my friend. And I remember we were around this table. There was probably 7 or 8 of us. And we talked about issues that were going on in the city. And there was this woman there, and I didn't really know her at the time, and her name was Devon Petrosello. And later on down the line, she introduced us. She had gone to some meeting and she had met some man, and this man told her that they would train our group and learn how to really follow city government. And so it was kind of all set in motion. The stars were all aligned, everything was in place. And we met this gentleman. We went to Fullerton. We were meeting in Fullerton. And this man started training us in how to follow city government, how to read the documents, how to read the financial statements. He taught us. We went to Fullerton every Thursday for probably 6 to 8 hours. And we just did everything he told us to do. The second thing that happened to us was that a lot of my clients knew where I lived, and there was these women who came and knocked on my door, and they said, how are we going to get our products? And it was so funny. I'm like, because we actually make skincare, but now we make it for big companies and spas and stuff like that. And we were like, you know, so it was all new, trying to figure out how we were going to reinvent ourselves and learning all this political stuff that we knew nothing about. Zip, zero, nada. And again, I was very hesitant to go to Fullerton and learn this, thinking, what a waste of my time. This is not fun. But all I could imagine was this gentleman who was taking his time to teach this group of citizens in Riverside how to follow the money in the city of Riverside. And that is really how we started. And we would go to Fullerton, to this building, and I'm going to show you the building we went to. The gentleman's name was Mr. Smith, because we called him Mr. Smith. That's all we knew. We didn't really know his real name, because nobody really knew what the outcome of this group was going to be. And so we just kept it all kind of confidential. And what we would do is we would have our lesson. We would order city documents. Okay, like say for instance, we would order a particular project that the city had started working on. Well, we would order every document they had. And then we would read all the documents, and then we would take them back to our teacher, and then our teacher would just skim them, and then he would tell us, he would make us a list. Okay, ask for this document, this document, this document, this document, this document. And it took us a couple months to really learn the pattern of following the money. So we did this for a couple months. Let's say a couple months. Okay, we did this for a couple months. And then he had made a comment in one of our classes, and he said, you need, you know, we were doing so much work, like we needed a place to house all this information. Like we needed like a newspaper, or we had thought of, and then one day we were coming home, and it was actually myself, my husband, and Mary Shelton. And Mary Shelton hasn't been on the political scene lately at City Hall, but she was very active at one point in time. But the three of us were in the car, and we were talking about our lesson, and I said, oh, we should start a blog site. It was me. I said, we should start a blog site, and we should call it like, you know, I had just found out what TMZ stands for, the 30-mile zone. I had just found out what TMZ stands for, 30-mile zone. I'm sure all of you watch that on TV. And I said, why don't we call our blog site TMC, 30 miles of corruption? Because what we were dealing with at the time was redevelopment. And I just kind of guessed that it was a 30-mile zone. right? So let's take it and call it TMC. And that's how it all started. And so it was really kind of comical in the beginning because we would order thousands of pages of documents and we would have them. There was sometimes there was so many documents, like they would have boxes they would have a conference room set up and they would have just boxes and boxes of stuff. And we would go through every page. Yes, we would go through every page of documents. So that's kind of how the paperwork started. And when we first started going to talk to the council, the actual dais, right? It was that was funny in itself because I had gone in the very early stages because I was going to figure this out and I knew the city was doing something wrong. I just couldn't pinpoint it. I didn't know enough about the documents, the politics. I knew nothing. So what I did, because I kind of like to have fun. I'm actually a really fun person. And so I went to City Hall because all I would hear was like how bad I ran business or how bad, because this is how they treat you. Okay, so you're just the most horriblest person. But what these people didn't know about me is I have this incredible self-esteem. So they didn't know that they could throw whatever they wanted at me, but I was gonna throw it right back at them. And I was gonna do it in public, and I was gonna do it in front of them. And they knew that when I started going after some really sensitive topics, they were I guess they didn't know what to think of me at that point in time because it didn't matter. So what was really interesting is what my teacher had taught us about speaking at City Council was that if we were ever uncomfortable about discussing anything up there, that put it in a question form. Just ask it in a question. Don't accuse, just ask. Okay, so this is the good part. So there had been a rumor that the city manager at the time, I'm not going to say his name, but anyway, there was the city manager at the time was having an affair with his assistant city manager. It was a rumor. It was all over town. And everybody was talking about it, right? Because how does some girl in City Hall go from making $80,000 to like $200,000 in like less than 2 years? Hello? $80,000 to $200,000 in a couple of years. How do you think she did that? Oh yeah, I know how she did it. And I always said and even her, like I will go right to her face and discuss this because we knew what she was about, right? So what we learned was that we got incompetent employees based on what they were willing to do for their boss. Yes. So I had come back. It was a Thursday, and I had come back from one of the meetings, and it was so funny. That next Tuesday, was city council, and I was sitting there with a lot of my friends, and we were new at this. And they were all going, what are you going to talk about today? And I wouldn't say, because the city manager wasn't there. That girl was sitting there in his seat. Right? And she just always rubbed me the wrong way. But I knew the rumor, right? And my teacher told me if I was uncomfortable about saying anything, just ask it in a question. So, my friends were all around me. They were saying, like, what are you going to talk about? What are you going to talk about? And I'm like, because I didn't want any of them to jinx me. Like, I didn't want to tell them what I was going to talk about until I had gone up there. So I went up there and I started talking about the rumor about the city manager having an affair with the assistant city manager who was actually sitting there, right? But I was mentioning them by name. Because if there is if there is an affair going on at City Hall, and they are using they're using their employee time to have this affair or whatever, it needed to be discussed, right? It was part of the discussion. So I went up there and I asked if any of the council knew the rumor that Brad Hudson was having an affair with Belinda Graham, because that was the rumor that was all around town. And oh my goodness. So when I asked them if the rumor was true, it was like I landed a bombshell on City Hall. So then I just asked him, is it true that Belinda Graham or Brad Hudson is having an affair with Belinda Graham? Does anybody know? Can you please tell the public if it's true or not? Because again, if these rumors are floating around, they need to be addressed. So then I told them, thank you very much, and I went back to my seat, and you could hear a pin drop. They were like, and my friends were mortified. They were like, oh my God. And then that was the start of me being able to discuss anything. And they knew I was getting good at this. So that's kind of how it started. I'm going to leave it there. We've got a lot more to go because it really gets interesting at that point. And I will actually post the first couple of WordPress posts that we actually wrote on this particular issue, where we actually stated that she does her best work vertically as opposed to horizontally. Because you tell me who gets a $100,000 raise in 2 years? Only Belinda Graham, because she must have been really good at her job. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you soon.